Welcome to the latest episode of ET with GOTB. A Champions League full of surprises has culminated in the least surprising final. While the WSL draws, little controversy this weekend, see what I did there, and the Eagles are soaring, so let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. On today's episode, we are going to look back at Chelsea crashing out of Europe in somewhat heartbreaking fashion, the many draws in the WSL, plus Man City continue to pile the pressure on Chelsea, and the Championship has wrapped up and Palace are officially going up, which also sadly means that Bristol City's relegation has been confirmed with 2 matches to go. And of course, Sophie, you are going to give me your highlight of the week, so get thinking now, that is your warning. If you haven't already, make sure you are subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube, because we do have a video up there as well of the episodes. Comment and like wherever you can if you've got anything you want to say about the episode or anything you want to say about the matches this weekend. Do drop us a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Alright, this week, I know last week we went against the grain and we didn't start with the Champions League, but we are going to start with the Champions League this weekend. Chelsea 0, Barcelona 2, with Bon Mati and Rolfo getting the goals there. It ended up being a 2-1 win for Barcelona on aggregate, and it was quite a heartbreaking way, I guess, for Chelsea to go out. It does mean, of course, Barcelona will be facing Lyon, who won the other tie 2-1, meaning that they won the overall tie 5-3 on aggregate, so there was a bit more chaos in that game. But I guess the main takeaways from this one, pretty sad way to bow out for Chelsea, not without its controversy, which is fair to say, I think. But I would also say probably not the main reason they didn't win it.
It was one of multiple reasons they didn't win it. And I think the frustration will be is that they know they came so close and they know they closed the gap on Barcelona. And that is definitely the difference over, when they met in the final 3 years ago and they were thumped 4-0 on that day, and it looked like the gap was never going to be able to be sort of surmounted or closed at all, and they have, and they came close last year. They felt they deserved more against that tie at the Camp Nou last season, and they've certainly come closer this year with that historic win in Barcelona. But I think there was just a whole load of things that just went against them on the day. They didn't play as well as the first leg. They needed to be perfect. They weren't perfect. Barcelona were better than they had been the first leg.
Arguably still not the free-flowing Barcelona we're used to.
But I think it was a smart move from her elders to send Fridolina Rolfo up into attack. It meant that the pace was coming a lot higher up the pitch, and it was stretching them a lot further rather than before with when Cal Dente was playing and Rolfo was stuck at left back, and so she had more, I guess, of the pitch to run up. And Chelsea in that instance were dealing with her really well because she came up against Lawrence and then Charles, and it was kind of easier for them to manage, whereas when she was starting from a higher place it kind of cut out one of those players. I do think Chelsea, when we were standing right behind the Chelsea goal in the second half, and when Nuskin hit the post, I was like, that's done. That was the second time they hit the woodwork. They were being a bit wasteful in front of goal. They need to be clinical. And then, of course, the injury to Ramirez changed the whole game as well.
I think one of the first and foremost, the fact that Ramirez was injured was a huge blow. Macario, of course, started, but different type of player. I don't think her hold-up play is maybe the same strength that Ramirez had. And I think Ramirez carries a bit more clout about her, I guess, because she's played in Spain and they know what they're getting with her. So she was a big loss.
Completely different profiles.
Yeah.
Macario's not so good holding the ball up with her back to goal, I think. I think she wants to be running through lines or threading the passes through.
She kept coming quite deep as well.
Yeah, and the problem with Chelsea, and the same with Lauren James in a way, she's not that kind of hold up forward, and she floats as well, and she'll go wherever she wants to. And that's kind of the beauty of her creativity. I think the problem for Chelsea is, you look at the injuries they have this season. Sam Kerr, Mia Fischel, Mary Ramirez in this game, they were the kind of profile of players that you want to be kind of that tough physical presence up front who will, punish defenders like Ramirez did in that first leg. And they just didn't have that profile of player in the second leg. And I was saying, joking with our friends afterwards, saying, maybe she should have tried Millie Bright up there. But the problem for Millie Bright is she has no minutes in her legs. So, she could have been a presence, but I think it was just too big an ask for.
Yeah, and also they'd gone in there, they were ahead. There was no need to risk putting a player like that on. I think so. The Ramirez injury was a key factor. I do think Barcelona were better, but I think Chelsea were still getting joy down the left side. A lot of their opportunities were coming from there. Lucy Bronze had started in this game, and they had chances in the first half. And I think they probably deserved to have gotten a goal in the first half. Barcelona's goal did come from a Buchanan mistake. The ball was kind of cleared out back into Barcelona possession in the worst possible place. And then the shot then deflected as well. So that was a bit of a blow. And then, of course, Buchanan getting the double yellow, which was such a shame. Within 4 or 5 minutes, she got 2 yellow cards. The second yellow for me was not a foul, never mind a card. She won the ball. So that sending off, of course, really changed the game. And I think if you're getting a second yellow, it has to be a nailed on yellow. It can't be one of these, it wasn't even a foul. So I think I can understand the frustration. It changes the game, of course. Barcelona are hard enough to play when you've got 11 players on the pitch. When you have 10, Chelsea had to sacrifice any sort of attacking outlet. I actually think they did pretty well with 10 players against Barcelona.
Chances. They just weren't clinical with them. Writing Canner had chances. She broke, counter-attacked, got into the box, and her shot was just too close to Catalina Cole and goal. And you kind of, those opportunities needed goals at the end of them. They needed to be put away because they were creating. That's the thing.
I think the penalty was probably less controversial, than the second yellow. I still think it was a super soft penalty, but I feel like it was less controversial because you had VAR there. I just feel like the second yellow for me wasn't a foul, never mind a yellow.
Yeah.
But you can see how she won the penalty.
Well, yeah, she stuck her leg out and got tripped by Ashley Lawrence, but she made the contact, I think, more than Ashley Lawrence did because Ashley Lawrence...
She was kind of bundled into Ashley Lawrence because of
contact, but then she stuck her right leg out and she went down. The referee bought it in a way. The problem with VAR, and we know this, is that won't be seen as a clear and obvious error. So it has to be a clear and obvious error from the referee. There was contact and she went down. And so I think the VAR probably were like, well, there's not obviously, it wasn't clear, as I say, clear and obvious to change the decision. And that's, I guess, the sort of contentious side of the VAR as well. I don't think if the referee saw that again, she would necessarily give it on first look if she had the camera as first look, if that makes sense.
Okay. But it did make for Chelsea then a frustrating way to lose it. Understandably devastated. Players were. Emma Hayes was emotional afterwards. I think the big plus from the day was the fact that Chelsea had managed to sell out Stamford Bridge, which was fantastic. The crowd were brilliant. They were loud. The away fans were brilliant as well, so it made for a really good atmosphere. They really got behind the team, especially after the red card, I think, as well. They were so loud and they kind of drove them every time they came into Barcelona's half. So in terms of that, it was a great match. And I think across the two legs, it was some great football. There was, of course, some irony that Barcelona definitely picked up some of Chelsea's alleged tactics from the first leg of the diving and the time wasting, because that it was certainly going on at Stamford Bridge. But I think any team in that situation does that. It's a tactic, and that's, I think, what we were saying last week as well. It's part of the game that you have to be used to, and it's frustrating, but it happens. And I think, it doesn't matter what team you are, if you're in that situation and it's a Champions League final on the line.
Yeah, it's football. And we said it last week about Chelsea, and we'll say it this time, it's football is what comes with it. And teams are going to game manage their ways into finals.
It's barely a talking point.
I think actually Barcelona showed their experience and their smartness in it, because there were occasions where Chelsea players could have gone down and stuck on their feet. I'm thinking of a couple of instances where Writing Canary broke and she got caught, but she kept running. And I think in those instances, Barcelona go down, get the free kick and have the chance to throw it into the box.
And slow the game down.
Especially in the latter stages for Chelsea, throwing things into the box was the most important things, especially with the height of Millie Bright, who came on as a striker.
Great to see her back.
Yeah. One correction from earlier is that I got my lefts and rights confused.
That happens, it's fine.
When I said Charles and Lawrence dealt with Frida and Rolfo,
I did think that.
I meant Carter and JRK, but Correction.
So sadly they are bowing out of Champions League, which is a shame. Emma Hayes blamed a lot of it on the referees. I can understand her being emotional afterwards. This was the one she wanted. And now all that's left is the WSL, which is where we will turn our attention. But it has been a really enjoyable Champions League to follow with Chelsea. We've been to every single game this season.
I think Emma Hayes will I've seen on social, a fair bit of flack for her remarks. And I think it's probably the same as what Aitana got for her remarks last weekend. And I don't necessarily agree with them. But I do then also think that managers should have leeway to call out bad refereeing performances and be honest about it. But I do think a lot of it was based on the hurt of missing out again. And I think actually Jess Carter was probably the most
pragmatic.
That's the word. Pragmatic in defeat. She did a really good interview in the Mix Zone afterwards, and basically said, it's down to us. We weren't good enough. We lost the ball too much. We weren't able to retain possession, and we needed to be really tight in those areas, and we just didn't do it, and that's why we lost. And I think that's probably the reflections that we should probably focus on more, because
you don't concede that first goal.
Yeah,
that's a Chelsea mistake.
That's a mistake, but also there were so many opportunities where
they could have scored.
Well, they could have scored, but they could have also retained possession, and they didn't, with a loose pass here and there. Or Lauren James, for instance, holding the ball up in the middle, and there was the option to pass out to Ryton Canard again and again and again, and she would always just delay way too much, and the space closed up. It's just about being quicker in those moments and more slicker in terms of your control of the ball.
Yeah, and your decision making. Yeah. But yeah, as I said, it's been a very enjoyable Champions League, and hopefully next season there will be more teams to cover in the Champions League, more English teams to cover.
Fingers crossed for 3.
Fingers crossed. Oh God, that's going to be great crack trying to cover all of them. Right, moving on to WSL results then. We had Everton 1, Arsenal 1, Russo and Hobson with the goals, Villa 1, West Ham 1, Lehman and Cook with the goals, Spurs 1, Brighton 1, Turland and England with the goals. I sound like a broken record. Leicester 0, United 1, Toon with the goal there, and then Bristol City 0, Manchester City 4, Fowler with 2, Rogers with an own goal, and Greenwood with the icing on the cake at the end as well. So it means the table looks like this. Manchester City are still sitting top on 52 points, 20 games played, 46 goal difference. Chelsea are on 46 points with 18 games played and 39 goal difference. Arsenal in third, 44 points, 20 games played. United in fourth. Liverpool 3 points below in fifth, but with a game in hand. And then at the bottom, Bristol still on 6 points and are now confirmed to be relegated with 2 games left to play, and West Ham out of reach above them on 14 points. So just for clarity, that's 6 points difference between Chelsea and Manchester City, but 2 games in hand, and 7 goal difference. Now Chelsea are due to play Liverpool and Bristol this week, so they will be looking to bang on the goals, absolutely. But we'll get to it, but it's just more pressure. And I guess as well with Arsenal drawing, it takes away, I think, some of the pressure from Chelsea from below. No? I mean, Arsenal are still in touching distance.
It won't matter to them.
There's still 2 points behind them, but at least they can maybe think less about it.
They care less about second spot than they do about the top of the table, so I think the pressure is still definitely on.
Okay, so if you look at Everton 1, Arsenal 1, that was the early kickoff on Sunday. Everton, once again, struggling with numbers and once again pulling off a performance. I just don't believe Brian Sorensen anymore. I don't care. I'm not going to take on, I mean, it's too late now, it's the end of the season, but his kind of, we'll just see what we can do.
You messaged all of us yesterday in the WSL group. You messaged something like, Brian Sorensen is the one who claimed not to have studied and still gets an A in his exam.
That's Brian Sorensen all over. I didn't study, I'm going to fail, and comes out with an A every time. He once again came into the press conference with a list. And there were some key players missing, to be fair. Like Aurora Galli out was huge. She's been a stalwart in that team, playing nearly every position, and has been key to a lot of their success or their performances. So her not being there was going to be a bit, I thought was going to be a bit of an issue. But once again, they pulled it out of the bag.
Arsenal, the fact that they have a really strong identity in the way that they know how they want to play football.
Well, that's what he said. So it doesn't matter when players go into a different position, they know what they're doing.
They kind of know what's expected of them. They know what they're doing, and yes, it takes work to learn new positions and stuff, like what Aurora Galli has had to do this year. But the fact that they know the kind of key core principles of Sorensen's style has been key to their success, I think, this season, and kind of the performances that they've been putting in.
I think some teams this week, as we take ever closer to the end of the season, have had performances that have typified their season. So with Everton, it's that dogged dragging a performance out with whatever team you can put out on the pitch. With Arsenal, it's not being clinical, again, in front of goal. That has killed them in so many games. Possession gets you everywhere, but it doesn't win you games if you're not putting it in the back of the net. But still, like Courtney Brosnan did really well between the sticks. Everton were creating chances of their own as well down the other end. They nabbed the winner in the 90...
Not the winner,
the equaliser, sorry. Nabbed the equaliser in the 93rd or 95th minute or something like that through 16-year-old Izzy Hobson. I cannot imagine what it's like scoring for your childhood club at 16 in a game like that against Arsenal, where Arsenal are winning. And the elation and the celebration was pretty special for her.
Yes, it was. I think she did a post-match interview where she just talked about how she'd been an Everton fan all of her life. Well, all of her life, the 16 years
all
of her
those
life.
16 years.
All those 16 years of her life. And she's come through the academy, she's one of their own. And I think that's been, that's really, really important, showing kind of the side, that kind of development pathway of the game.
And the commitment.
And, for Brian Sorensen to have faith in her to chuck her in against Arsenal, I think speaks volumes. I think, we know very little, we've seen very little of her as a player up to this point, but she's made her mark. She's become the youngest scorer in WSL history, that's for sure. And she's become the youngest scorer for Everton in something like 14 years or something.
Wow.
So I think she's made her mark, and there'll be lots of eyes on her from now on.
God, hang on to her, Everton. Jesus. For me, that performance typified both of those teams' performances so far this season. And I also think it was the same for Villa and West Ham, also 1-1. Another game with an equaliser at the death. Who doesn't love that? Villa looked like they had all 3 points wrapped up. West Ham obviously had other ideas. They had 37% possession, the Hammers, but created 11 shots to Villa's 10, 3 of which were on target to Villa's 4. And again, I just think that's the tale of their season. Villa having possession, not being clinical enough and putting a game to bed. West Ham creating chances but not good enough quality chances, but getting that really valuable point at the end of the day, because at the time they were still fighting.
It essentially almost confirmed their safety.
Yeah.
And it shows that they do have character to build back, and I think we saw that in the last game against Manchester City in their kind of second half performance against there. They do have kind of that resilience or ability to build back into games, but all too often this season it's been way too late, and there's been so little clinical finishing from them, and that's been the main issue, I think, for them this season. For Villa, as you say, kind of typified them. Couldn't name a keeper on the bench.
Sophia Poor had her first full debut.
Kind of typifies the situation they found themselves in. I think I spoke to Carla Ward pre-match, and I was like, I asked her about that kind of having to change formations and lineups due to the nature of injury and kind of that adaptability. Losing Laura Blinkilde-Brown at Christmas was a big blow as well, and has made them very, very scarce in numbers at particular points. And she said that she can't fault her team in terms of the application that they've put in. It's just been really, really tough in terms of those numbers and in terms of having those bodies. And she said that she's learnt the most as a manager from it as well, as she did when she was at Birmingham.
Yeah.
She was like, tough times teach you the most. So
pressure makes diamonds.
I think they'll have learnt a lot from this campaign, and they look like they're getting 7th spot. They wanted 6th, but
that's still pretty good. And we think about back to the beginning of the season where Aston Villa were in the first few months, we thought, it wasn't looking good and everyone was writing them off and saying Cart should be sacked. So it has massively changed. But I think Lehman getting her first goal of the WSL season, I think it just kind of shows how they've struggled in terms of actually putting the ball in the back of the net. So a draw there, points shared. Another draw, because we've had lots of them, was Spurs against Brighton. Now this was I wouldn't say that this is a game that typified either side's season, because it's been a bit of a wild ride, I think, for both sides in maybe slightly different ways. I was at this one. Spurs started well, pressing well. They were making it difficult for Brighton to play out from the back, and it was a little bit cagey at times for Brighton. They were sticking to it, and it was a little bit cagey at times. Charlie Grant almost got the opener with a brilliant counter-attacking run and just could not get her shot on target. So it ended up being Brighton opening the scoring through who else but Elizabeth Turland. She'd had a one-on-one with Becky Spencer in goal, and Becky Spencer pulled off a brilliant save, and like within a minute or two later it was coming in from the other side. Again, as initial save, I think it was from a Turland shot, and then she came in on the rebound and got the goal. And the momentum kind of swung Brighton's way then. I think you have to factor in that Spurs are missing Celine Bizet, Martha Thomas and Drew Spence, and that kind of maturity on the pitch, those important kind of relationships that we're used to seeing there. And I think they struggled to problem solve during the match. And I think them lacking, I spoke to Robert afterwards, he said that was obviously a key part, and that there are some relationships in there then that are new and it's kind of harder to problem solve. But I think the substitutes for Spurs made all the difference. Ashley Neville kind of came on late, but she was so good as soon as she came on. She was causing all sorts of problems, and it's what led to Bethany England getting the equaliser. And then the momentum kind of felt like it shifted again. The game became really open and they could have gotten the winner, I think. But having spoken to both managers, they were both like, actually a draw. I can be happy with a draw coming away from that game. So
I think it's trying to problem solve for Robert Villaham at the moment, or like find new dynamics to his attack. I actually this is going to sound really weird, but I don't know how else to explain it. When we were in the cupboard, or sort of kind of cupboard, in the Adobe Women's FA Cup event.
Explain it quicker. Oh, okay, sorry. Jesus.
We all went to this Adobe Women's FA Cup event last week, and we all got some interview time with a couple of people. Like the media were invited to do interviews with a couple of people at the event, and one of those people was Robert, and because there was nowhere quite to go, we were all pulled up.
It was
to
a weird venue,
the attic at the top.
We were in a corridor, but
a weird corridor,
very narrow
kind of
corridor.
Thing. Anyway, in that situation, I really wanted to ask him about the fluidity of his attack, because we've seen it. He's trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I may have talked about this last week, but you're seeing like Jess Naz being played directly. You're seeing Bethany England kind of out in the wide areas, which you're not used to seeing her. You're seeing Thomas in the 10, Clinton in the 10, Vinberg out on the left, Clinton out on the left. He's trying to find all of these this kind of dynamic attacking
different tools,
solutions, to get through teams. And I guess in the long run, you're going to say it's going to make them a really good side because they're not going to be predictable. But I think for now it's going to come with its, peaks and troughs. They're going to score goals, but then they're also not going to be clinical enough with them as they're sort of learning their new roles and positions.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you've got a relatively young team and you're missing key players like that, you need the experience to be able to problem solve in those situations. And understandably, that's why they struggled a bit. But I didn't think it was going to be all that exciting a game. And despite it being 1-1, it was actually a really good game to watch. So I really enjoyed it. Okay, moving on. Leicester United, we were rooting for you. We thought this was going to be a draw as well. But no, Ella Toone had other ideas, scoring after 80 minutes. But it was a wonder strike. Absolute peach of a goal. So your homework this week, if you haven't seen it already, is to go and watch the Ella Toone goal. This is another game where I feel like it typified their season, right? So
I just say there's many things that give me a lot of joy in football, but Ella Toone scoring one of the goals is one of them.
That's good. There you go. I hope that wasn't your highlight of the week.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, this feels like a perfect example of what both teams have been struggling with this season. Leicester, once again, playing well, troubling teams, and it not turning into 3 points. And I can imagine Jen Foster being really frustrated at that. Manchester United having lots of possession, creating lots of shots, but arguably not enough quality chances. Now, to be fair to them, they did have create 21 shots, 9 of which were on target, with 62% possession. But I just feel like that kind of typified their season.
Leipzig had a good performance in goal. I think she was back for the first time in a while. So,
well, welcome back.
She had a pretty good day between the sticks. I think I'm going to look at the positives for Leicester. They got that draw away at Lee, and they lost 1-0 at home. And I think that shows the progress that they have been making and have been trying to make this season. And when you think about where they were last year, they were fighting for survival at this point. They'd very almost got it, I think, but they were still in that kind of great escape mode, right? And to think that they're now going sort of toe-to-toe with a team like Manchester United, who, yes, have had a difficult season in certain respects, but they're still, considered one of the best teams in the league. And Leicester now, taking it to them, they're having chances, they're hitting the post, they're they're keeping them out. They're keeping the scoreline narrow, and that just shows the kind of progress that they're making.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on to the evening kickoff of the weekend, which was Bristol City 0, Manchester City 4. It was sadly confirmed after this game that Bristol City are relegated after putting in a really impressive first half performance, keeping the game 0-0 in the first half, which I thought was really good. Amelie Thestrup again causing problems, almost scored for them, only for some really brave goalkeeping from Kiara Keating. It resulted in a bit of a nasty clash between the two, and it is what ended up forcing Thestrup off at half-time, which was a real shame because it meant Bristol City had kind of lost their key outlet for any hopes of getting a goal. But I think in the second half, City looked to be moving through the gears then. It felt like the goal was coming.
I think they did struggle.
In the first half particularly.
Well, in the first half, they did struggle without Bunny Shaw, and I think we all went into this game thinking that was going to be the case, but still thinking they were going to beat Bristol City. They do have enough kind of weapons in their attack to be able to break Bristol City down, and I think the problem for Bristol City, I think as soon as the first goal went in, it was kind of like popping that balloon.
Yeah, floodgates open a little bit.
Their whole sort of, it's just a deflating moment, right? Because you've run and you close them down and you've worked so hard for so long and you pretty much kept them at bay.
To about 60 minutes?
And then in the blink of an eye it's in, and then you're suddenly like, oh, we're relegated.
Yeah.
But we're relegated because even if we draw the game, we're relegated. So that's going to have a massive, I guess, effect on your mentality as well. And I think that's where the floodgates did open. I think City still have questions to answer because I'm not sure any of those three attackers necessarily provide what they need as a central attacker.
So Gareth Taylor spoke beforehand. He wouldn't give the game away, but he did say that we could expect to see fluidity, and I think we did see that a little bit. Chloe Kelly was coming through the centre in the first half, and she just looked like a player who hadn't been starting, right? So she just looked a little bit rusty in front of goal. Mary Fowler then comes up clutch with a brace.
Yeah.
So she did really well. But, I guess that does cause teams problems if they're able to switch so much.
Yeah, fluidity is great, and it can be a real, puzzler for the opposition. I just think, the problem is you have to adapt so quickly to Bunny Shaw not being there. And yes, Mary Fowler was an option in those kind of central areas a bit more in that second half, and her second goal particularly showed kind of more of a poacher's instinct to scoring goals. But can you do that on a regular basis? Now, yes, there's only 2 games of the season left, but they are facing Arsenal next week. And for all of Arsenal's issues, they're going to be a tougher tests than
absolutely. And I think with Arsenal, you just never know what you're going to get, because they'll have a couple of games in a row and you think it's clicked, and then you have a game where they'll lose or draw and you're like, maybe not, and then they go on another little short run of a game or two and you're like, this is it. And I feel like we've had that a couple of times.
And I think for Arsenal, being able to have a say in the title race is going to fire them up a little bit. I know they could, they can't do better than third this season, we know that, but they could.
Well, they can.
Well, they can, but they're not going to.
No.
It's pretty inevitable, if that makes, yes, numerically they can, but they still will want to have their say, and they will want to, I think they'll want to get them back for that FA Cup win as well.
For sure.
There's a lot of rivalry there. Yeah. They're not going to let up without a fight.
City did celebrate every single goal because they know just how important they are. I did think Alex agreed with that was just not necessary at the end. Bristol were already down. You didn't need to put the final nail in the coffin. They'd already had an own goal. That was just unnecessary. But
is it that gif or meme with the stop,
they're already dead.
Yes.
But then on the flip side, you're like, totally get it. Yeah. Man City, goal as many as possible.
They need, it's that goal difference.
Absolutely. So they will be absolutely delighted with getting 4 there. Moving on to the Championship, this was of course decided pretty much last week, but it all concluded this weekend. Charlton 2, Southampton 0, Palace 0, Sunderland 0, Durham 1, Birmingham 0, London City Lionesses 3, Lewis 2, Sheffield 1, Blackburn 3, Watford 3, Reading 2. So Palace, of course, ultimately the winners, and Watford and Lewis relegated. You were at that game, Soph, at Selhurst Park, and you got to watch the trophy lift. What were the celebrations like?
Yeah, so the game was goalless. I think Sunderland actually did really well against, a team who are obviously flying high. And it showed the progress that Sunderland have made this season, which is no small, kind of effort, They came from, pretty much bottom of the table. Not quite, obviously, because they would have been relegated, but
Yeah,
down in the lower realms of the table to finishing third. And I think they can be really pleased with what they built over the last season. For Palace, they will have wanted that win, I think, to just, cap up the celebrations, but ultimately didn't spoil their party. They had over 6,000 there, a record crowd, a really good crowd. The ultras behind the goal were very, very loud throughout, and it was just a party day. And they lifted the table, and I think
lifted the table.
I'm really
throwing a table around the place. They were.
I've been working all day. My brain
Did they lift the trophy as well, though?
Yeah,
that's the main thing.
I've been working all day, and my brain isn't working. So they lifted the trophy, and I think a lot has to be said for what they've done this season. Laura Kaminsky came in at the beginning of the campaign. They'd been troubled, with the kind of stuff around their old boss, Dean Davenport, and the way that he left the club. And they've been their journey hasn't been smooth up until this, but the club have now thrown the support behind them in the last couple of seasons. And Laura's come in, and she was like, I asked her what was the key to their success, and she said people. I've got the right people in, both in my staffing team and in the player team, and they have this kind of ethos, and the values that they have is what have got them through this season, and that is what is crucial now. Demands of the WSL are going to be different. It's going to be a challenge, but when you have kind of the support behind you and the structures and the sort of not amalgamation, the narrowing of the gaps between the men's side and the women's side.
Yeah.
The fact that they train at the academy training ground and all of that kind of stuff, I think does put them in a good position when you think of like the likes of Bristol, who came up last year, who probably didn't have as much support as they might have right now. So it makes it more interesting in that respect.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to seeing you next season, Crystal Palace, in the WSL. Was that your moment of the week, Sophie, or do you have another one to share?
No, I'm going to go with Izzy Hobson's goal, just because I think, scripts, as we've seen with Emma Hayes, scripts are rarely written in football, but you can't have, that was a dream come true.
Yeah.
One for the fairy tales, I think, and for her to kick off her kind of WSL career with a goal like that against Arsenal of all opposition. It's very, very special.
Very special. We have Liverpool versus Chelsea to look forward to on Wednesday night. That is one of their catch-up games. I think the other catch-up game is Spurs. But they face Bristol then at the weekend as well. So as I said earlier, they will be looking to get as many goals as possible. Can Liverpool or Bristol upset that? We shall see. Only one trophy left for the Blues to try and get their hands on now this season. Then you're doing Everton versus Spurs on Saturday. I'm doing Manchester City versus Arsenal on Sunday, and then you're doing Liverpool versus Manchester United. So there will be lots for us to talk about next week. As ever, thank you so much for tuning in.
Can I just say I'm very excited to
You always do this. Why does I do my little outro?
I just wanted to say that I'm so excited just to be able to focus on one competition for one weekend. I'm so excited. So
there you go. That was so worth interrupting my outro.
It was.
As ever, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions for us or you want to give us your thoughts on the games, do reach out across our socials. We are at Girls on the Ball on pretty much everything. And we will try and answer any questions you do send to us in next week's episode. We will chat to you then.